Good morning, and welcome to our panel on fulfilling the NASA mission together. We're so happy to have you here with us as we discuss the significance of our most important resource, our workforce. We will also discuss how we continue to develop our personnel to meet new challenges and opportunities in support of NASA's mission. I'm Lori Grindle, the Director for Programs and Projects at NASA Armstrong. Armstrong is a small center, approximately 1,200 people, located in the Mojave Desert. We have an agile workforce that executes a diversity of projects across NASA's missions in aeronautics, science, and space. At Armstrong, our focus is on conducting flight research, and because of our size and our location, our workforce is pretty close-knit, all working together to further aerospace transformation. I believe that one of the reasons that NASA is consistently named the best place to work in the federal government by the Partnership for Public Service is because of the investment we make in our people. We start early with internship programs that are available for high school students and up. That opportunity to work alongside experienced NASA personnel, gaining hands-on experience, mentoring, and training helps to ready our workforce to take on the challenges ahead. But it doesn't stop there. With our team-based approach, similar to the things you just heard about in the previous session, all employees have the opportunity to both learn from and support each other. It's one of the reasons that I love working at NASA. Each one of our projects has a diverse group of people coming together to achieve a common goal. Well, we're fortunate today to have representation from each of the 4 aeronautics centers. And I'm going to call on each of the panelists and they will introduce themselves. And when I call on you, please tell us your name, project, center, and in addition to telling us what workforce culture means to you and your center, tell us something about your humble beginnings, like what was your paid job and something you learned then that sticks with you today, or the biggest influence growing up that led you to NASA. In my case, my first paid job was at the local movie theater when Top Gun was released. That last action scene of the movie that I watched repeatedly as I prepared to clean up the theater after the show definitely sticks with me to this day and gave me an appreciation for high performance aircraft, which I have the opportunity to see and work with every day at NASA Armstrong. So with that, I will ask Mary Wadle to continue with the introductions. Go ahead, Mary.
Hey, thanks, Lori. I knew you were going to pick me first. I'm Mary Wadle, and I'm currently the Acting Director for Technology Incubation and Innovation at Glenn Research Center. Glenn Research Center is, we joke, we're on the north coast of the United States in Cleveland, Ohio. And we while a bit bigger than Armstrong Flight Research Center, we are a research center, and we actually support activities, research and tech development and flight activities across all of NASA's mission directorates. And so for me, having spent a good portion of my career here, I've gotten to take advantage of that. And so for my personal background, I started doing rocket engine testing and then moved on to aeronautics in project management in a wide variety of areas, including aircraft icing. I went back and did cryogenic fluid management, project management, then went into supervision back in aeronautics. And so I've had a great career of being able to switch around and contribute in multiple areas of NASA's mission and in aviation. So the first job, my very first paid job, was at a bakery in a small town in Ohio during high school. And I'll share one part about it. The bakery set it up with they would always have a teenager working the front, and then they'd be paired with somebody who was quite a bit older who was there to kind of deal with the money and everything. And pretty regularly, the person who was older would go sit in the back and smoke. And now I think about that, I share that because it's so wild in today's world that somebody would be smoking in the bakery. So that's interesting. But the other thing I learned, because I was living it, was no matter what age you are, where you are in life, you should contribute because it matters to all the employees. And I take that and that you're not beneath doing any task. And so that I still take to this day, no matter what job I'm in. It's whatever wherever I can help to fulfill the mission. That's where I'll place myself. And like Lori, I'll answer the other one too. The influences. I was of a ripe age for Princess Leia and Star Wars. So, and fictional characters were the example, right? But then we had real life examples come in my time too, with the shuttle and Sally Ride and others that then joined her. So those were inspiring for me.
Nice. Thanks, Mary. All right. So next we'll have Valerie Wiesner.
All right, thank you. Well, my name is Valerie Wiesner, and I am at the Langley Research Center. My research, I'm a materials research engineer, and the work I do primarily supports the hypersonics technology project here. And so, interestingly, come May, it will be 10 years since I joined officially the NASA family as a Pathways intern. I got my beginnings, my start at NASA, actually at Glenn Research Center, where Mary's at. And so I was able to start work there and looking at developing materials, high temperature materials, specifically ceramic matrix composites or CMCs for gas turbine engine application. So a very aeronautic centered application. Life happens, and I had the great opportunity to be able to transfer centers to Langley, where I am now here in Virginia. A kind of a climate upgrade, if you will, from Cleveland. No offense, Mary, and everyone up there. But now, within the project that I support, I'm now developing similar materials for gas turbine engines, but now more for hypersonic applications, for reusable hypersonics, to help us really achieve the ability to rapidly achieve rapid transport around the world. And also, there's the connection with space, which, always a great connection to have here at NASA as well. And so back to some of the questions you started with, I'd say workforce culture, from my experiences at Glenn and Langley now, what really I think permeates our culture is a sense of teamwork. Kind of touching on some of the threads that Mary was getting at. I think teamwork is probably one of the it is a core value for NASA, and I think it's the one I see every day. And utilize every day with all the wonderful folks that I work with regularly to really accomplish the amazing research and achieve the missions that we're really targeting right now. And so, as for one of the intro questions, for my first job, so I'm from Kansas originally, and there you can actually get a job, I think at around 14 or 15. So at the ripe old age of 15, I got my first job working as a waitress at an assisted living community restaurant. So not your standard serve all restaurant, but actually one tailored more for an assisted living community. And as you can imagine, I learned so much from all of the residents and got a lot of really kind of funny stories along the way. But I think one of the lessons that really stuck out from starting and working there for 3 years throughout high school, really for me, was learning to work with and also learn from people from all different generations. So obviously the residents, being 15 at the time, they were quite older than me. But I learned how to, learn from them and also work with them and get to know them. And the same goes for the team that also worked there. So it was a mix of, nursing professionals, medical team that, I worked with regularly in addition to food service. So it was a very diverse group of people. You have fresh outs from, undergrad all the way up to have been in the medical field for decades. So I think what I learned, in addition to, you got to do, not being above the job at hand, but also really being able to work in diverse teams, I think has really helped me to this day. And so with that, I'll end my intro.
Nice. Well, thanks, Valerie. No, that's great. And for you to have the experience of being in to having been at two different centers, and see perhaps what the culture might be like that's different between the two. That's great. So a good contribution to this panel. All right. So next we'll go to Shanna Withrow-Mazer. Go ahead, Shanna.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So my name is Shanna Withrow-Mazer, and I sit at NASA Ames. So, and enjoying the sunny California weather finally after a couple weeks of rain here. So I actually got my start with the family business. So my dad and grandpa owned a auto body shop. And so I grew up fixing cars and, just being around the shop with them. So I think that was really helpful to just kind of get an idea of how to actually use tools and what the mechanical systems actually looked like, and then like just troubleshooting, just kind of really focusing in on a project and the hardware in front of you and figuring out why this whatever issue is occurring. So I think that kind of sparked my interest generally in mechanical type systems. I unfortunately I'm from Missouri originally, in a small like farming community. So I only knew one engineer, but he was just really great. His name is Dr. Harold Finch, and he actually developed the rotating mechanism for a lot of the early, spacecraft. And so that was just really cool to see at least one person that I actually knew and could talk to and ask questions who was in an engineering field. And I found him really inspirational because he did a good job of both doing the technical work and then turning around and seeing how that technical work could benefit the community, and really investing back into the community. And so I think that's what got me intrigued about NASA specifically versus another type of organization. And then I got my start at NASA during my freshman year. I got to participate in a program with the microgravity plane, aka the Vomit Comet, down at Johnson, which was really great and really fun. And then actually one of the female engineers pulled me aside. The females had to have an escort because there wasn't a restroom in the building. So we had to go walk across the airfield. So we had to have an escort across the airfield. And so she was like, hey, you should consider applying for an internship. And I was like, oh, surely you have to be a junior, senior, grad student. And she was like, no, just apply. And so the next summer, I actually started at the ripe old age of 20 at NASA Ames, and I've been here on and off ever since. So I converted and became a Pathways in 2018, then a civil servant in 2019. So that's kind of my NASA journey, and I think that answers all the questions.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks, Shanna. I mean, so yes, we for this panel, right, we've got great representation from each of the centers, as I mentioned before, but also in varying stages of our career. I did not say that I began as an intern in 1992. So varying stages of our careers, definitely. But okay, why don't we thank you all for those great introductions, and we'll go ahead and we'll launch into some questions. So, and you might have touched on some of these in your intro, so we'll just throw them out there and see who wants to go first. But first question: what drives you, and what makes you want to work at NASA? I'd like to start. Valerie?
I can jump on that one because I didn't quite touch on what motivated me, what drives me, and as well as what brought me to NASA. I'll say it seems like from my experience working at NASA so far, it usually is divided into two camps. There's a camp that, they had no idea they would end up at NASA and wanted to work at NASA. And then there's a second camp of folks that, really want to work at NASA and have known for a long time. And I would say I fall into the latter camp, because I'll be the first to admit I have been a big NASA nerd for as long as I or really anyone in my family can remember. I think Barry kind of hit on it with shuttle, Sally Ride, growing up, seeing, shuttle launches on TV. Every time I would see, and even to this day, seeing anything launch, and now with aviation as well, just that sense of awe, that, wow, we are able to get off the ground. We can fly, right? It sounds kind of simple, but to me, that just really, really inspired me at an early age and looked and encouraged me to even look up. I was an avid stargazer as a kid, and so that kind of set me on my STEM path towards first science. I did physics for my undergrad, and then ultimately engineering for my graduate school. And so what drives me now that I'm at NASA, and I think it's been a big thing that's motivating me throughout my career, is the creativity that we get to utilize on a daily basis to really solve a lot of hard problems, if you will. Flight is not easy. I think, as a lot of the speakers have touched on, a lot of the technologies they're making, throughout this event, it takes a lot of creativity and persistence, of course, perseverance to come up with solutions to these really complex problems. And I will say the other thing that kind of drives me being, on the research side, the sense of discovery, I think is really exciting. And so I'd say that, a combination of being able to use creativity regularly, with my colleagues coming up with new solutions and discovering something that can enable our future aviation community, I think, is what really motivates me and makes me love working at NASA.
Nice. Okay. That's great. So Mary or Shanna, which would you like to go first?
I mean, I can go next.
Okay,
and
go ahead, Mary.
Valerie touched on quite a few things. And Lori, you revealing your star year. I now figured out I've been here longer by just a few years. Which is interesting because I've spent quite a bit of my career being, because of how NASA did hiring, being one of the youngest, and to be the potentially the oldest is kind of wild for me.
It sneaks up on you.
Yeah, it does. But kind of looking back over that is what drives me is after a while you realize like what public service means and how you can contribute in a different way than in other ways within NASA. And so as an example, I lightly mentioned, that I had done some of my career in aircraft icing, which is preventing aviation accidents from due to icing. And so we really, in that case, it's very much a passion and a driver because you're literally saving lives. And when I do tours of the icing research tunnel at Glenn, I often will mention that I've worked with people that have personally impacted your safety when you step onto an aircraft. And so that you find those things where it's just such a passion and it's making an impact. And then coming on, we were listening to Bonnie from Joby and just the whole thing about the future of aviation and advanced air mobility, and being here and working at a time when aviation is having a major change and being part of that future, whatever it, however it ends up looking like, is another thing that I can look at and say, wow, I mean, this is really cool, right? And NASA's doing Artemis and going back to the moon. And so I step back and like, these are things I never would imagine being part of. And yet here we are, and it's exciting. And in some small way, I get to make an impact into that.
Well, yeah, that's great, Mary. And for me, I'm always talking about how I love the opportunity to improve the quality of life for your average person. And so it's similar to what you're saying. And this aviation transformation that we are in, it's amazing to be right here while this is going on and to have the potential to influence some of those kinds of changes. So, okay, Shanna, what would you like to share?
Yeah, so I actually have the privilege of working with a lot of our students. I think I've mentored at this point about 150 students, a little bit over that since I've started. And so that actually has been both helpful for me in the early stages of my career development. Now I'm the aeronautics systems lead for the Mars sample recovery helicopter, so I don't get to do it quite as much in that role. But up until about 6 months ago, I was spending probably about 25 to 50% of my time actually mentoring. And so that was, I think, really helpful for me, especially at that stage in my career, because by having to explain things as I was doing them, then it actually was helping to really reinforce that I knew the material and things like that. And then also it's just so exciting to have that, fresh energy coming in every semester and things like that. And now a lot of those students are actually on the team full time. And so that I think has been really exciting and motivating to just go through that and see those graduation milestones and everyone join the team and then move into the next lead position, and see, I guess because the Mars helicopters are such a dynamic and changing program and we're trying to, do things very quickly, then a lot of things that it's like, okay, this group, of students and I were doing this on a whiteboard 2 years ago, and now it's the baseline design and we're getting ready to launch, and like things like that, just having that that success and actually seeing the repercussions of your work early on in your career, I think is really motivating and helps. Especially, I know retention has come up a lot in the early career circles, especially with COVID and things like that. And I think that is one of the keys, is just whatever your field is, just being able to see and figure out how to measure that you're having some kind of impact.
Yeah. No, that's great. That message, along with flying on other planets, very cool. We can do aviation everywhere. So, okay, great. Thanks, Shanna. I think my next question was going to be how mentorship impacted your career, and so I think, Shanna, you just touched on that quite a bit. Do you have anything else to add to that along those lines?
I think it's just, again, going back. So I'm also part of the early career advisory board, and we did several surveys throughout the last couple of years to figure out what is important to the early career community. And the big things that came out were diversity and inclusion, knowledge transfer, and retention. And both the knowledge transfer and the retention are very heavily tied to mentoring. And there's actually like a lot of reports that have come out, through multiple sources that are showing that actually, specifically for females, recruitment in STEM fields is not as much of the challenge at the moment as it is to retain women after the first 5 years of their career. And that they're strongly linking that towards having someone who is immediately relatable. So you tend to have these gaps where you have these women who are in very high leadership positions, CFOs, center directors, assistant directors, things like that, and then early careers, but maybe not someone who can, kind of relate to just that next step, and a lack of quantity of mentors. And there's a high correlation there with retention. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I have to say about mentorship, is that I really do feel like it has the potential to kind of, make or break the future of the workforce.
Nice. Yeah, a very critical component. Mary, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I can't say enough. I had many people pour into me as I was going through my career, and gave me great advice. People who at the time were maybe my first line supervisor, and in the future ended up being like an associate administrator or multiples of those folks in NASA, right? So I got the benefit of seeing their career progress and getting their advantages. So that was, for me coming up as a young engineer and then moving into project management. And somewhere in there, the switch flipped also, where it was like, it's time for me to give back and to give all that great advice out to others. Now I'm starting to feel, even though I still have a number of years left in my career, I'm starting to feel like, I can't, like time, there's a pressure. I can't get it out fast enough to enough people. But I also learn from all of the people I mentor, because they bring another perspective, right? So it gets me to think differently. It's good to have folks that challenge me and what I'm sharing and why would I do that. And so I walk out oftentimes with quite a bit more than my mentors do. So yeah, it's to me, it's hugely critical. And I think to Shanna's point was probably, for me, it was very helpful coming up through my career and realizing, yeah, I can do this. I can do the next step, because I had mentors and people supporting me.
Yeah, no, that's great. The comments about learning from them as well, right? Learning from those people that you mentor is a great thing. I mean, the whole idea of teams and being diverse groups of people coming together, that diversity of thought, when we get those different perspectives and kind of that infusion of new people. Yeah, they ask questions, very curious, right? And so, which is wonderful. We can get sometimes we can get caught into the same cycle of things, and that new perspective. Wow, why don't you do it this way? Oh, why don't we do it that way, right? It gives you that opportunity to consider other ideas. So, Valerie, what are your thoughts about mentorship?
Yeah, really, I 100% agree with everything that everyone says so far about mentoring, because it really is so important. I can't remember who mentioned it, but mentorship is transformational in a lot of ways for folks, and me in particular. I have been super fortunate to be able to be mentored through formal programs as well as informal programs across the agency. And I could go on and on about all the amazing things that my mentors have done for me and really helped me advance and be open to different career opportunities. Instead, I'd rather for folks, early careers or students who might be listening in, or anyone who wants a mentor. I think there is a lot of when we think mentors, it tends to be more formal, right? Like, oh, I must go ask this person to officially be my mentor. When in reality, it doesn't necessarily have to work like that. You don't need a program necessarily, although they're very helpful to getting those connections to establish a mentoring routine or relationship. And so I would encourage anyone who's interested in getting to know someone in a different area, or who has a career path that seems interesting, or even just they're working on something interesting. I think I've been always incredibly impressed by how willing people at this agency are to step up and help and provide sort of the mentoring that a lot of the early career, mid-career, anyone at any stage of their career really can benefit from. And so I think there's a lot to be said about formal and informal mentoring relationships. And so I really encourage folks to, if you don't already have someone in your life, if you will, that kind of has that mentoring ability with you, I would highly encourage you to start looking for it. You might be surprised. It could be your peer, or it could be, someone that, like to Mary's point, you could mentor and benefit from that interaction as well.
Nice. Well said. Well, let's see. We're getting close to the end, so maybe one last question. What do you wish you knew at the beginning of your career? And I will start with Mary.
I had to think about this a little bit, but how important it was to learn how to work with other humans from a diverse background, and how much more important that might be than actually becoming a deeper technical expert if I wanted to get my work done, right? We do so much in teams, and we're actually, we're working with other humans on a regular basis, and how critical that was. And I don't think when I started, I had a full appreciation of that. It was, if I get really a lot better at my technical area, this is going to sort itself out. And then the other, it doesn't quite work that way. But the other part about it was being more intentional to learn how NASA does business, how the money flows and how to go advocate for it and all of that. And learning that earlier, I think would have been an advantage. So those are kind of what would have helped. I could say some other things I've learned along the way, but in some ways that makes me who I am today. So I don't know if I would want to change anything of that.
Yeah, got it. Okay, Valerie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Mary hit, I think, a really important one with respect to navigating organizational, regulations, if you will, or a lot of the different steps that are out there for advocacy, for coming up with ideas, and really even just how to navigate. As a civil servant, we have different operating procedures when it comes to a variety of different, support functions, and getting a sense of how those will help you in your career. The earlier, the better, in my opinion. And then that what I also was thinking of, I wanted to share was, especially early on, I came for me when I first got to NASA, I was so nervous, in the sense that, I'm working with all of these super established, amazing people who've been at it for decades in a lot of senses. And here I am, I'm just green, right? And so it's kind of intimidating at first. And so for me, kind of breaking the ice and getting more comfortable asking questions for not just, understanding, but also help. Or organizationally, like I mentioned, learning how to function, right, in a new work environment, where the cafeteria is, stuff like that, to all the way to, technical problems. And then to kind of underscore that the mentoring part again, and being more open to asking for mentorship or even just advice. Like I mentioned, I've been very impressed and very fortunate and grateful to everyone who has been able to help me along the way. And I think the most important thing for early careers, just starting out, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yep. Good deal. Okay. Well, we've only got a couple of minutes and then we have to wrap up really fast. So Shannon will take us home.
Yeah, I would say probably what I wish I knew earlier was how to better measure success and how much I was progressing and how to fail gracefully. So I think with the measuring success, again, when you're coming in, especially if you're on one of the teams like I was at the beginning, where most of the people that I was interacting with were 40 and 50 years older than me and were mostly males. They just have such a lifetime of knowledge, and they literally wrote the book on whatever, and so it just is a little bit intimidating coming in initially to try to get your feet under you. So I think that some things that helped me were just like thinking about from meeting to meeting, how much of the terminology in the meeting did I understand? And then like when people ask questions, whoever answered the question, did I know that answer before they answer it? And would I have answered it in the same way? And so there's like some little things you can kind of do when you're brand new to a technical area or something that kind of, again, let you measure progress before you're kind of contributing to like project milestones and things like that. And then on the failed gracefully portion of it, I would say that I love planning. I'm a very, I like having everything, in a row. And I think I wasn't really able to mature and move forward to that next stage of my career until I learned how to be able to just say, well, that didn't go as planned, plot twist, let's try something else, and not get caught in that cycle of, okay, well, that didn't work. So, this has this, and this implications. Just like, okay, that didn't work. What's next? What can we try different? And I think that has made a significant difference.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. This has been a wonderful panel, and thank you for spending your time with us today. I mean, it's really exciting to see how the different centers and NASA people in their career are contributing to the mission. So thank you very much.